So we know that higher doses increase the amount of lean mass gained. So in order to become the mass monster or the Tinder Chad that you want to be, you might have to toe that line. So since we've gone over how to design your first cycle, I think it's time we discuss how to come out of your cruise or your PCT and take off like a damn rocket ship into your next one, assuming you've talked to your doctor and you're in good health. And this is with the assumption that after your first cycle, you've already titrated up to about 500 milligrams, and you know how to manage your estrogen, and you've gotten your second round of newbie gains. You would have gotten one round as a natural, and this is your second round as an unnatural. With the goal in mind that we are trying to add an extra compound and possibly one oral to fill in the gaps. So what we're going to be getting to by the end of this is running your testosterone as high as we can while filling in the gaps with something else.
I'm not ready for Trent.
The smartest way to approach this would be to add a DHT-based compound. They have less side effects than a 19-nor. So we're going to go into what a DHT derivative is before we get into all the dosing and other considerations that you would need. So what is a DHT derivative? Your DHT compounds are derived from dihydrotestosterone, and they have very, very mild androgenic effects while also having no estrogenic effects. So for someone that's a heavy aromatizer or a female athlete, this is usually your preferred class of steroid to choose from. So in order to get to what we're going to use in this next cycle, we needed to know what the DHT steroids are. So as you can see in this chart, I kindly borrowed from Derek from More Plates, More Dates website. We have Masteron, Primobolan, Anavar, Anadrol, Winstrol, Proviron, Superdrol, and DHB. Superdrol is like the Super Bowl of orals, but it'll also nuke your liver. So for the purpose of this cycle, we're not going to be using Superdrol. We will only really be focusing on Masteron and Primobolan, which are referred to as Mast and Primo in bodybuilding circles. For injectables, because they're the safest and most effective steroids you can use, and all the others on that list have more complex side effects and cascades that we need to talk about before you try them, and you're better off doing the basic stuff, getting good at that before we start adding all the exotic things. So what do Mast and Primo do? They have three main functions. They help with nitrogen retention, they help with muscle protein synthesis, and IGF-1 production, which are three big pillars to muscle growth. And the other benefit of running them is they have an anti-estrogenic effect, where they seem to help suppress your estrogen, which a lot of times makes it so you don't need to run an AI. So instead of needing to run this other drug that has other issues, especially with skewing your lipid profiles, now you can just use another anabolic to add on to your testosterone and still get the AI effect out of it without having to take something else. And another benefit to Primo and Mast is they tend to come in anti-esters, and you're typically already taking test CYP or test enanthate, so you're gonna have that same 7 to 14 day half-life depending on the drug itself. So you kind of know all of your anabolics are going to be synced up around the same time. They're coming in and they're leaving. So as you titrate up, you can really fine-tune your dose and make it so you're not getting side effects from big spikes one way or the other. But of course, like every drug, there are side effects to think about. With DHT derivatives, generally hair loss, BPH, and acne are the three big ones to look out for. BPH, if you're young, you probably don't have to worry about. That's more your prostate growth. More an old man thing. You'd still be good to get it checked here and there. But if you're under the age of like 35, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Hair loss is a big one, especially for the younger guys that care about it. It's the opposite. The older guys don't care about that as much because most of them have lost their hair anyway. And acne, especially when you go up and down in your doses, that's when people tend to notice that. So that's why I still think titrating up and down is the best instead of just going full dose and dropping it completely, having these big hormone spikes. That seems to make acne way worse. Primo also does slightly raise hematocrit for some people, not everyone. but not nearly as much as EQ, but I would still keep an eye on that. As a little pro tip, I have found that the brand Hims, Hims, has a finasteride and minoxidil topical spray. So if you're hair sensitive, that could be something to look into because it contains the topical, so the finasteride doesn't go systemic as fast, and it has minoxidil to help with the hair regrowth. And as for the acne, a lot of guys have to take 2 showers a day. I do have that with multiple clients where they're taking 2 showers a day. I advise using Dove soap. Dove soap has some lotion in it, so it won't dry your skin out as much as just a normal bar of soap will. 2 other considerations with the Mast and Primo would be that, as I said before, they can drive your estrogen down pretty low. So some guys can have their estrogen completely nuked down to like single digits on these. So it is important to do blood work on them, making sure that you're not getting your estrogen too low, because that creates more issues with your cardiac health and your muscle growth at the same time. The other issue is they jack your sex drive through the roof. So stay off of Tinder and OnlyFans, you perverts, because it's gonna happen. You might as well delete that shit right now. You don't want to be spending wads on OnlyFans girls because you ain't getting laid. And if you are getting laid, you might want to warn your significant other, because it's going to be a wild ride for the next couple months. If anybody has had any experience with this, let me know down below.
My comment section.
So now the fun part, we can get into the doses and cycle design. With your DHTs on your second cycle, you really want to start running your test up higher, because the AI effect of the Primo or Mast is going to drop your E2 enough to where you can start pushing up higher with the test. So by running this combination, you should be able to push up to 750 tests or so by the end. Well, I would start out at a 1-to-1 ratio at 3 to 400 of both test and Primo for men. And women, you're going to want to start a lot more cautious, like 50 milligrams, if you're going to be delving into this at all. And the great thing about DHT derivatives is they seem to help with body composition, since it's keeping your E2 down. Your water retention is not as great, so you're getting those dry, hard, lean gains instead of the bubbly, watery look you'd get on Deca or the harsher orals. That's why Anavar also works well in this kind of cycle. I'm not a huge oral guy, but I do like VAR. I feel like that's a very, very safe alternative too. But the one thing it does tend to nuke is your HDLs. So you have to watch them closely. And I would take astrologist route for kidney support just in case, because it is metabolized by your kidneys somewhat. And it wouldn't be a bad idea just to take something that's cheap on Amazon like that helps protect your kidneys. And if your blood work shows that your E2 is getting too low, you can always just increase your test and get to a ratio of 1.5 or 2 to 1. So you could be running like a gram of test and 500 Primo by the end. And as long as everything stays in line, you feel good, you're looking good, your diet's on point, your training's on point, you should have a great second blast. And another option that's similar to Primo and Masteron and its effects is EQ. People tend to like that too. But if you look at this chart here, it shows that EQ takes a very, very long time to saturate. So up to 60 days before it's fully saturated. And at that point, if you get blood work and you find out something's wrong, you're now waiting another 2 months or so for it to fully get out of your system. And then by then, who knows how much damage has been done to your kidneys. Or if you're having anxiety issues, you're going to be dealing with that for a lot longer than if you're using a different compound. So I would say EQ is probably not the best bet to use, but it is a suitable substitute if you really want to run it, or if you can't find real Primo, or if Mast and Primo just aren't in your budget, because EQ is a little bit cheaper. But all in all, the dosing is ultimately up to you and whatever compound you want to run. I personally wouldn't have any clients go above 1.5 grams, because that is a big jump from your first cycle of just 500 milligrams up to even 1 gram is a big jump for some guys. But as the research has shown, the higher you go with doses, the more mass you'll put on. So while you don't need to run your doses like 5 grams or 10 grams like some guys online tell you to, it's overkill at that point. I think if you're just going up 500 milligrams per cycle your first 3 or 4 cycles, and then you're going to be up to that 2 grams or so that a lot of bodybuilders run, and by then you'll have a couple of years under your belt, I think that's the best way to titrate up and to get some lean, dry gains under your belt. So if you have any questions or any comments you want to drop, just drop them below in
my comment section.
And for any coaching inquiries or random questions that you want to ask me, you can shoot me a DM on my Instagram at @theofficialSethGreen. I'll link that in the comment card at the end.